morning, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Todd Clint's SharePoint Podcast, though it's not just Todd Clint, and it's not about SharePoint this time. Mm-hmm. It's Shane and I talking about cord cutting. And this episode was recorded live. This is episode 370 for you podcast listeners. Episode 370 recorded live Friday morning, December 22nd, 2017. I am Todd Clint. You can find me on the internet at Todd Clint on Twitter, Todd at toddclint.com in the email, toddclint.com for the webpage. And then there's that guy. Shane, take it away.
Hello. And I would like to point out that it is afternoon here on the East Coast. There will be no breakfast remarks from me. It's be lunchtime. But so Shane Young here to make sure that Todd does a good job on this particular episode. You can hit me up on Twitter at Shane's Cows. You can see my world famous YouTube channel, Shane Young Cloud, Bold Zebras, Shane.Young at boldzebra.com, and Facebook, right? Because we're doing the Facebook Live for the first time, right? Yeah. Pretty exciting. So
So for the folks that are joining us on Facebook Live, we have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Todd Clint Netcast, and we'll put some links to all that out here. But that's where we do the weekly thing. This was a special one-off one. We normally record on Mondays, but this coming Monday is Christmas, and so Shane and I will be stuffing ourselves full of things and all that. And then the Monday after that is New Year's Day, and I'm going to be gone. So we decided to do the special one on Friday, and we decided to take up cord cutting. And cord cutting is something that both Shane and I have become infinitely familiar with in the last few months. And there's a lot of interest in it. We've kind of hinted about it on the podcast, and a bunch of people showed interest. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to record this one. I'll try to get it out as soon as I can so I don't get behind over the holiday weekend. But that's how this whole thing started.
Yeah, and by behind, Todd usually means like months. So, it could literally be that, we don't have TVs anymore by the time this episode comes out. So just full disclosure, watching live was the way to go for a lot of you.
Yeah. So for those of you that listen to the recording, it would be like we'd be talking about the new fancy tube TVs that came out and this thing that Sony has that's got tapes that you can record stuff on. It's usually about that far behind. But let's get to it. So we initially we planned for this thing to be 30 minutes. And when we made that plan, we already probably had 90 minutes worth of material, and we've probably doubled the material since then. So we're going to try to get into it and talk about stuff. If you have questions, if you're watching on Facebook Live on the event, throw them in there. If you're watching on YouTube, throw it in there. And we've got our producer, Lori Gow, and she will make sure we see the questions, and we will try to answer them as best we can. But we're very interactive. If you've seen us speak in person, we love the interruptions and all that. So dig in with that. So first, we kind of wanted to start with what is cord cutting. We see the phrase everywhere. It means a couple of different things, and that's kind of what we want to start with. So Shane, what does cord cutting mean to you?
So cord cutting to me, right, because I am not a pedantic answer, right, means I got rid of cable. So really it's cable cutting. I got my giant scissors out, called up the cable provider, and I cut all the coax cables and took their $200 or $350 worth of boxes back to them and said, take these things. So that's what it is for me. It's a cost-cutting method for getting rid of the cable bill.
Okay. And for me, it's very similar. I had DirecTV, I had satellite, and I'd been with them forever, 15 years at least, a good long time. And so there wasn't a physical cord running into my house, but I got rid of DirecTV, and that was it. Now, the reason we bring that up is because for some people, cord cutting means not paying any evil corporation anywhere for any content. You and I have not strictly done that, but for us, it's just been getting rid of, the well-known content providers. And we will cover all aspects of that. So whichever camp you fall into, there's content here in the next hour or so for you.
Yeah, and one of the things to point out also as we jump in here, right, is we're going to 100% concentrate on legal methods, right? We're not going to talk about any of those. Because if you go to the dark web, there's a lot of bad, evil ways you can steal content, borrow content, whatever. Everything that we're going to talk about is completely above the board. Yes. No one's coming to your house to arrest you for, anything. Metallica's not going to send you a cease and desist with a $2,000 bill for downloading one of their songs.
Yes, that is true. Everything we will talk about is legit, legal. At least in the United States, everything is sanctioned in the state of Iowa or the state of Ohio. It's all good stuff. Yeah, so you can do any of this without concern about going to prison, anything like that.
And I think it's important to consider because there's a lot of things out there. A lot of people get started with those hacked Fire Stick devices, and that is cord cutting, but it ain't legal. So
yep.
I don't want to talk about any of that.
And when I first started talking about this with my wife, that was one of the things she's like, "You're not going to end up in prison, are you?" Like, well, God, I would not last very long in prison. For one thing, I'm way too pretty for prison. But just yeah. So yes, everything here completely legal, completely above board, all of that. So we've got the what. Another reason is the why. So there's a couple of different reasons why people end up cord cutting. What was your motivation for it? Did you just were things working too well? Did you just want to make things more complicated and crazy?
Yeah, no, I think for me, it was the anger that I've received every month. On the 12th, it was $263.10.
$263.10.
Yeah, every single month, and it started, so years ago, I probably had Time Warner for 15 years, kind of like you did with DirecTV.
Right.
Finally, I got fed up with them, so I switched to Cincinnati Bell-Fi Optics. They cut my bill way low, hit the 1 year mark with them, and they tripled my bill, and they're like, oh, this is the best we can do. So that was really when I got real serious about this, because you and I have talked about this for years, and I've just never had that inflection point where I wanted to go and do it. And I don't know, one day I woke up and $263.10 was the straw I couldn't handle anymore.
I'm just having this flashback to The Jerk where Steve Martin's writing the checks, for the eyeglass thing. 10 cents. Yeah, for me, it was similar to that. Part of it was saving money. And I don't remember exactly what my DirecTV bill was. I know right now with loose numbers, we're saving a little over $100 a month, which, I'm happy to have. I'm happy to have $100 more a month to spend on gadgets and tablets that I'll never use. Part of it was saving money, and not that I minded paying for the service or the content, but just as our adult lives have changed, I have less time to dedicate to that kind of stuff. And so as the bills have gone up, the time that I've had to watch it has gone down. It just doesn't seem like I'm getting the value that I want from it. So that was part of the thing. The other thing was I have systematically moved all of my TVs hang on the wall now. And so there's no pieces of furniture for all these set-top boxes. There's no place for the DirecTV box or the TiVo or whatever. And I like the clean look of having the TV on the wall and nothing else. And I couldn't find any place to put these things that I didn't want to pay for anyway. And that was kind of how I worked into it. So everybody's got different motivations. The other thing is, as you're listening to this, know that it's not an all or nothing deal. You don't have to completely cancel everything and go cord cutting. You can start piecing things together as it makes sense. And we'll talk about that a little later, kind of some strategies around it. But yeah, the money is nice. Again, I'm saving $100 and some a month. You're saving a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up saving $151 a month, right? And so I won't get into, I kind of broke out my whole bill, but, I'm not going to get into all that. One of the things, kind of keep in mind as we talk about saving money, the first step for a lot of people really could be just to call up your provider and be like, this is redonkulous. One of my Facebook friends, Aaron, he posted a copy of his bill, and him and I had roughly the same service from the same company, and his bill was about 40% of my bill, right? His bill was a little over $100 for almost the same exact thing, because he's the type of guy that called them and just sat on hold for hours on end to be like, no, I'm not paying that. I'm not paying that, and for him, that was his personality. It worked out great. I'm just not that person. I'm not a negotiator. I ask you what something costs, and then I make a decision. Does it work for me or not? Yeah. I'm not going to fight over pennies, or in this case, even $100, because it's just not who I am. Yeah,
and so I'm not either. I'm the same way. But I will say over the years with DirecTV, had the same thing, had the same experience. So yes, if you do have some time and you do like the give and take of the negotiations, yeah, definitely give them a call, find out. Keep in mind if that triggers any kind of recontract things, if it puts you on for another year on the contract or whatever, that might happen. But yeah, very, very typical thing. Most companies understand that it's way cheaper to keep an existing customer than it is to acquire a new customer. And for this business, it's a whole lot more the case now than it was 5 or 10 years ago, because cord cutting is such an option now. So yeah, getting on the phone with them, talk to retention, and just say, listen, I'm done, I'm out. I saw this great podcast that these two very handsome men did, and they've convinced me that cord cutting is the way to go, and I'm out, and then see what they'll do for you. That's a good thing.
Yeah, the one thing, so I did want to point out here, right, and we're going to get into all the pieces and stuff, but so I went from 263, and basically that was, my internet, my cable, and a whole bunch of devices being rented from those people, and then HBO for $19 a month, crazy people. And it wasn't very good service, but that's a different story. So that was 263. My new bill, turns out I needed internet, I needed a View, so one of the online services we're going to talk about, and then a subscription from Tableau, and that's how I got to $101.90. So we're going to get into what those are, but since I called out what I was paying, I thought I would point that out.
Yeah, and I haven't gone to the trouble of breaking mine out, but similar stuff. We were paying, and for me it was also confusing because I had DirecTV when they got bought by AT&T. That became one bill with different incentives for if you had multiple things. So my stuff got pretty confusing.
Yeah. So the other thing to point out is, for a lot of people, we've had these conversations like, yeah, but I almost pay just as much, today after this. But one of the things to keep in mind, so for example, I pay $13.99 a month for Netflix, but I paid for that when I had cable, and I pay it now. So that's not in this conversation. I pay, so there was that. Amazon Prime is another great source of a lot of content.
Yeah.
I already paid for that. So that's not in this equation because I was going to pay for it either way. So just make sure also when you do this, it's apples to apples.
Yeah.
Then I guess the last thing that you could hold me to is I don't have HBO in my current setup. But I was paying, Cincinnati Bell $18.99 a month for that. But because I can now buy HBO easily, I can turn it on or off through an app. And it's $15 a month when Game of Thrones comes back on. I'm going to turn it on for those 2 months.
Yep.
Game of Thrones goes off, I'm going to turn it right back off. So I'm going to spend $30 next year on HBO instead of whatever 19 times 12 is. I'm not that smart.
He's not. Yeah, and so that brings up a couple interesting things because we'll do the same thing. We did the same thing when the season of Game of Thrones ended here a couple of months ago. There was much wailing and grieving here at the Clint household. And then probably by Wednesday or Thursday morning, once we could see sunlight again and talk, we canceled HBO. But if you've ever canceled anything, you know the process. You can't do it online. You got to call up and you got to sit on hold. They don't make it easy to stop sending them money. With all of this cord cutting stuff, it's been exactly the opposite. Just like you said, if I want HBO, I go to a website, I click a button, and it's in. If I want to get rid of HBO, I go to the same website, I click a button, and it's gone. The flexibility and just the feeling of getting screwed just goes away. And that's been a big, huge thing for us.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. 'Cause that is, it's just spectacular when you're like, what do you mean I don't have to give four forms of an ID and a note from my mom to cancel this service? I just pressed a button?
Yeah. And true story, when I decided to cancel DirecTV, it took 3 months to cancel DirecTV. I paid for DirecTV for 3 months longer than I meant to. I had to get on 6 or 7 phone calls. It legitimately took me a couple hours of my time to cancel DirecTV from the time I first dialed the phone and said, hey, I don't want to do DirecTV anymore. Now, that was maybe a fringe one because of the AT&T and DirecTV thing. And I will caution anybody, if you're doing the AT&T and DirecTV billing combined thing and you cancel DirecTV, be very careful, take a lot of notes because that billing system is kind of weird and wacky. And I had a lot of trouble with that. Potentially could have cost me an extra $300 and some because of how long it took. I couldn't just go to a webpage and cancel that way. But yeah, that's another part of our thing we're going to talk about here later on. You mentioned you're already paying for Netflix, you're already paying for Amazon Prime. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about is look at the places you're already paying. Some folks, if you've got an AT&T phone, you can get some amount of content as part of that deal. I think T-Mobile's got a thing also. So, you look under the couch cushions for video content that way, and that will fill in some of those holes as you start cutting the cord.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about before we get in, can we get into the cooler stuff, the part that I actually want to hear here soon. But, from talking to people who've done the cord cutting thing over the, last 2 to 5 years or whatever, one of the things that came out in almost all of those, I don't want to say interviews, but conversations I had with people was almost every single one of them universally said they watch less TV. So to me, that's another giant upside of this, right? Who doesn't think they should watch less TV, right? We're not going to do anything about it. We're going to still watch the same amount of TV. But to hear these people say that one of the unintended consequences is they watched less TV, I'm like, I think that's a positive.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing. So that's happened a couple of times. I remember when I got my first TiVo, nearly 20 years ago. That was one of the things. I watched less TV because I wasn't. The way I like to talk about it is it's the difference between going to a buffet and ordering the thing that you actually want. If you go to a buffet, you end up grazing and picking up stuff that you would never want to order and eating more. But if you have to order the exact things you want, you eat less. And that was the way it went from channel surfing to DVR, because then I could only watch the things I wanted. I could skip through commercials. And then that went even further when we cord cut, because yes, it's the same thing. Now I don't have this to-do list staring at me. You haven't watched the last 9 episodes of Hawaii Five-0. Get to it. So yeah, you will watch less TV, and you're right. We all do that. We're all sitting on the couch, Al Bundy style, left hand in the front of our pants, channel surfing, going, I just watch way too much TV. Oh my goodness, a new episode of International House Hunters is on. So yeah, that's and that was part of it for you and I. I know that for me, the motivation was I got little kids now. I got a bunch of stuff going on. I just don't watch as much TV. And so it's about taking the scant couple hours a week that I have to watch TV and getting the most value out of it and only watching the stuff I care about and not paying $300 a month for that privilege. So yeah, if you want to get some time back and some money back, cut the cord.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting you brought up the kids because, traditional thinking would say, my kids watch the most TV, right? Kids are rotting their brains sitting in front of the TV. I can tell you that my kids watch the least amount of TV of any of us. And that part of that, though, is because they've changed avenues, right? Now they want to watch YouTube on their iPads, which I guess you could argue is TV, but I'm already paying for that. YouTube's free for them to watch. So, make sure you're thinking about that because especially when I started doing some of the research on this, it was like, oh, man, we can't get Nickelodeon anymore. My kids are going to be sad. I'm like, wait a minute. My kids haven't watched Nickelodeon in 4 years. Yeah. So don't overthink. I guess think about it, but don't get lost in like, oh, I can't have Disney on demand XD upside down backwards channel. So I could never cut the cord. Yeah,
and we're the same way. I'll be honest. My kids overwhelm me. We use the TV as a babysitter probably more often than I'm comfortable admitting. But yeah, you're right. My kids, they can watch videos on YouTube of other kids unwrapping, opening, unboxing stuff. That's amazing to me. But you bring up like the Disney XD app, that still works depending on what service. When we talk later about services, so some of that even still works. So they could have the Disney app on their iPad or their Android and still watch, Paw Patrol or, PJ Masks or whatever.
That's a good cartoon. I wish my kids still watched it. I liked that one.
Yeah. So now we've talked about that. Let's talk about the fun, geeky stuff, the hardware that you get to play with. And I really liked the first piece that you put on there. We've got an outline for the show. This may come as a big surprise, but there are notes. There is some sort of, but I do like the very first one that you put in there because I saw that and I'm like, yes, oh my God, yes. What was your first hardware concern that you put in the notes?
So the darndest thing that I missed the most, right? And I just literally last Monday, I think, returned, so just this Monday, 5 days ago, I returned my cable boxes. Just then, I finally was able to send those back. I sat down, and I'm like, crap, I don't have a clock in this room. Right? Think about how many of your rooms, or at least for us, the living room, the only clock was the cable box. My bedroom, the only clock was the cable box. So forever, I've had free clocks. I never valued the clocks.
You never understand how much you take advantage of all the free clocks that you're paying $300 a month for.
Yeah. So I just want to point that out. You need to solve that. You're probably going to have to solve that problem is figuring out how are you going to tell what time it is when you're sitting on the couch, not watching TV in the living room.
Yeah. And so that is a very valid thing. And again, because of my move to TiVos like 20 years ago, I hit that a little early because the TiVos never had clocks on the front of them. So one of, and I can't remember, we're going to put a bunch of these links in the chat room. Oh, I didn't put a link to the clock in there, but yeah.
You did. It's 8.
Is it?
Yep. Alarm clock.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, what we ended up doing is just going out to Walmart or Amazon and buying the cheapest $10 or $12, LED alarm clock, and setting in the rooms with the
struggle is real.
It is dumb how big of a deal that is. But yes, absolutely. We got the TiVo, we got it all set up and it was doing amazing things. And we sat down and watched TV and like, this is crap. I can't tell what time it is. It was like the whole thing was just, yes.
It's weird, because, and you have your TV on the wall. I have one of those big, nice display, things it sits on with all this, the cubbies for the DVR and all that stuff. And we don't use them anymore. So it's interesting.
Yep.
And I did want to point out, so Todd posted the link. All the links to devices that we post are Amazon links, and they do have our affiliate code. So we get like 17 cents if you buy anything from us.
All right here. Yep.
So yeah, I just want to make sure the FTC doesn't come get us because we're scamming you out of 17 cents by clicking our links.
Yeah, may not go to prison for stealing content, but all that. Yeah, and so all the stuff we put Amazon links. We've got our affiliate codes, but you can get the stuff anywhere. But a lot of times when I'm reading this stuff and starting out, I don't want to have to scour the internet. I want to know exactly what the guy that wrote the article used, so I could buy exactly the same thing and do exactly the same thing.
Yep. So let's dive into the first device that I think. So you've got one sitting on your desk, and this is the main device that I am using.
Yeah, and let's talk about hardware for a second. So
okay,
we're going to talk a little later about how to get started. But when it comes to the hardware, there's a really good chance that if you're watching this, if you're a fan of our show or follow us on Facebook or whatever, you already have something that you can use right now. And we're going to talk about what some of those things are. But the great thing about this is, everybody knows when you get cable the first time or satellite, there's this upfront cost. You got to buy a bunch of equipment. And of course, then that locks you into a contract. There's none of that because you have the equipment. You own the equipment. So we're going to talk about some of those things. But chances are you probably already have some of these things hiding behind your TV. So to get in is not going to cost anything. So, yep.
Go ahead.
So the very first one that we're going to talk about here is the Roku brand of set-top boxes. And Roku, all they make is hardware. They don't have any kind of service. They don't sell video stuff. They're not a whatever. It is just a box that consumes other people's content. And you can see kind of on the bottom there what they consume.
And so the one he's holding up there, that is called the Roku Ultra, right? And it's the creme de la creme, the Cadillac of the devices. And I can tell you that, honestly, that has probably been my favorite part of the whole cord cutting experience is how the Roku experience, having that device and, the interface it gives me. But the hardware is also really neat. And so one of the things I want to start on, because why not start on the weirdest thing, is the remote. So here is my Roku Ultra remote. And with this, they've got the cute little buttons for jumping to channels and all that. But with the Ultra, you get a couple of features that you've probably not thought of before. The first one is I can plug my wired headphones into this remote. And so I can have private viewing, right? So at night when the wife wants to sleep on the couch, but I want to keep watching TV, I pop in the headphones and I can listen to what is being played on the Roku on my TV from the remote.
Yeah.
The Roku remote. Yeah, it's just one of those features that's dumb until the first time you use it and you're like, oh, I can watch this violent movie and my wife doesn't have to hear all the explosions and stuff. I watched Pulp Fiction the other night with it. Oh. So the other thing here is with the Ultra, you get their top-end remote. And so it's got a power button for my TV. So this is the only remote I need to do everything, control the Roku and my TV. It's also got a volume control for the TV. So that's another big upside of the Ultra's remote. So I don't know. This remote has been one of my favorite pieces. And the nice thing is because I love my remote, the Roku Ultra also has a button on top. If you press it, it makes your remote go beep, 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 beep. So when my kids or my cleaning lady more specifically hides the remote from me, you press that little button that Todd's pointing to there, and then your remote makes noise. So you don't have to hunt for it anymore.
Yeah.
God bless them. Roku has made it's my favorite part of this whole experience.
Yeah. And so let me add some more Roku love on here. There's the remote. There's also a phone app. So if you've got an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever, there's a Roku app that will let you do all of those things. So if you can't find the remote or you know where the remote is, but it's like 4 feet away and you get your phone in your pocket, you can do all that. With that, the cool thing is, so I don't have the Ultra hooked up right now, obviously. I've got an older one. But all of my TVs, I'm using HDMI, which is the audio video thing. And I've got this thing called CEC, and it's called different things on different brands of TVs. I think Samsung calls it ArcNet or something. But it's this ability for HDMI things to talk to each other over the HDMI cable. And even without this particular model, if I have an older Roku without the power button, if I take the Roku remote and hit the home button, the Roku understands that I'm talking to it, sends a signal to the TV and says, hey, TV, turn on. Todd wants to watch TV, and turn to the Roku input. And so it does all that with one remote. And then the volume control, even like Shane said, even if you're not using the headphones, the volume control still works on the TV. Lynn in the chat room is asking, can you listen to the TV via the wired headset and through the TV speakers at the same time? I don't use the headset much, so I don't know.
So Lynn, I've tried. I'm going to tell you the answer is no. I haven't went and researched if there's some hacky way, but the way it works is when you plug in the wired so weird to say wired earphones, it automatically turns the TV volume to 0, and then it just controls it. So I don't believe there's any workarounds for that. Yeah. But I'm not 1,000% sure, about 95% sure.
Yeah, and that would be handy for if you had somebody who was hard of hearing, but not everybody was. That would be handy for that. I think, so we're going to talk about some other hardware stuff. For us, the approach that we took for the hardware, we've got multiple TVs in the house. As a nerd, I understand how all this stuff works, but not everybody in the house has the time or inclination to care like I do. And so the approach that I have taken is...
Your garage door's opening.
is that every TV has a Roku on it, and that is always the second input. And then every TV also has an Amazon Fire TV stick on it, and it is always the third input, and then there's always a Chromecast also. I did that because that way, if the grandparents come down or whatever, they have a fighting chance of figuring out where stuff's at. And while all of our favorite things have awesome Roku apps, in some cases, the Amazon app might be better, and so you might want to pick and choose from that. So I guess before we round out with that, the Roku, this one is right now $90 everywhere, Best Buy, Amazon, Roku.com, whatever. They do make cheaper ones, and you held one up. That little stick one, that one's $37. All the same stuff, less RAM, less CPU. When I started cord cutting, I had a couple of Roku boxes laying around, and that's what I kind of tried some of the services on and all that, and it was okay. I will tell you, it's okay to start out with something like the stick. That's not a bad place to figure out, what apps you have and what access. But once you really get into it, you want something like this with a little more horsepower for a couple of reasons. Number one, just the built-in horsepower, the CPU and the RAM just makes the interface slicker, things like that. It's going to be more future-proof as more apps get developed and they get more complicated. This one also plays games, whereas I think the stick one doesn't. The remote has buttons. My kids love to play Angry Birds and stuff on the TV. Also, one thing I like about this is it has a hard internet jack on it. It does wireless. It does 802.11G and B and AC and your mama and all that kind of stuff. But it's also got an Ethernet jack. So if you've got wired Ethernet, which will give you your best experience, we'll talk about that later. But the cheap one is great to start out with. If you just want to stick your toe in the water, it will also work.
Yep, that's exactly what I did. I bought the cheap refurbished one just to throw it out there and give it a whirl, and it turns out it was the right answer. And yeah, I bought for the wired connection, just like you mentioned. So that was my story. Good job.
Yep. So if you want to go to the Amazon side, Amazon has the Fire TV stick and the Fire TV boxes. Also good. One difference about this is it comes from Amazon. Amazon sells these pretty cheap. This one here is $35 if you pay full price, but you can get them for $20 pretty frequently. Same idea, a lot of different apps, but this is very much an Amazon consumption device. Amazon would love you to have Amazon Prime and watch their stuff there, listen to Amazon Music and all of that. It is very much an Amazon consumption device. The interface is very clearly pimping Amazon things to you all of the time. And I'm a big lover of Amazon things, so that's not a huge deal. But Roku doesn't have that because Roku doesn't sell anything besides these boxes, so the interface is a lot cleaner. The Fire TV stick has all kinds of great things. This one comes with a voice remote, so you can speak to it. It does She Who Shall Not Be Named, Amazon's voice-controlled thing. It interfaces with that. A lot of cool functionality with these. Again, pretty cheap. You can get them, with all that. So all of my TVs have one of these on them. And again, it was the same kind of thing. I had the cheap Fire Sticks running around. Once I figured out that there was some apps that I liked better on Amazon, then I went and bought one of the full Amazon TVs for, $60 or something. Does 4K, does all that. But one thing to be worried about or keep in mind is, again, this is an Amazon device, and Google is in the process of trying to make it so you can't watch YouTube on this because Amazon won't let you buy Chromecasts because they want you to buy Fire TV sticks. So those are all things that don't happen on the Roku because Roku doesn't have a competing device for anybody.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of politics you're going to learn about as you get into this world a little bit deeper. Well, or maybe you won't, but you'll be like, why are these 4 channels never available on this one service? And
it's because ABC owns whoever, and and honestly, we don't have it in the notes, but the other device that you can use is a Chromecast. And
I don't know how we missed that.
Well, because I don't think of it as TV, I guess is probably why. But for those of you that haven't seen one, a Chromecast, the little device hooks up to your HDMI. It doesn't have a remote because you use something else to control it. And so if you've got a phone, if you go into YouTube, one of your options is going to be to Chromecast, and it just turns the TV on, turns to the Chromecast, shows the video. All of these services support that. But for me, when I think of watching TV, I don't think of controlling that with my phone or my laptop. But they all support it. So you can go to a browser on your laptop, go to PSView, Cast, shoot it over there. Chromecasts are about $30. I use a lot of that, but I use it mostly for YouTube videos and music because I can control it on my phone, pop it over the TV. So I like those.
Yep. So another set of devices that you'll want to look at, kind of almost switching gears.
So we just talked about the consumption side. How do you get the stuff on the TV? So one of those.
Yep. And so then now, one of the things we're going to transition to, a lot of the pre-questions we got were around, what TV antenna do I need? Because we know that, or hopefully but over the air, you can typically get, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, the CW, PBS stations, right? There's a handful of stations that are just floating in the air right now.
RFD TV.
I don't even know what that is, but yep, RFD TV.
It's big here in the heartland.
So with that, you're going to need an antenna. We're going to cover antennas actually in this section too. But so as part of that, I guess we'll just talk about the antenna. We'll go out of order. So to start with, I bought this cheap little antenna, right? He is $25, and it's literally in my notes as a crappy antenna. It is a piece of plastic.
Though I will say one great thing about that antenna is when you hold it up, I can't see your face. And so that is a feature that I love about that antenna. Rabbit ears do not have that because you can still see your ugly mug through them. But that antenna.
What if I gotta do something like this?
Be like Wilson on Home Improvement.
But so these antennas, the reason I talk about these is two reasons. One is that it's super cheap.
Yes.
It's super easy to use, right? It's just got that same connection that you've been using with cable forever, right?
Yep.
But the other thing about these antennas is you can also, you stick them by your TV, right? You don't have to go hang them in the attic or put them on the roof. You just put them in a room. Now, the downside of that, though, is it's going to depend on where you live, what type of service you can get by putting this cheap piece of plastic on the wall. My sister, for example, she lives so close to the antenna, she put one in the wall in her basement. She got all the channels over the air, crystal clear. She's like, this is easy.
Yeah.
I live way out here, apparently in the middle of nowhere. And so for me, this antenna only gets all the channels, but if it's cloudy, if the wind's blowing, if there's a bird in the way, it will not pick up said channel. So this antenna was good for me to figure out what I could see from my house, but it was also enough to teach me that I probably need a bigger antenna.
Yeah. And we will cover a little bit of, and I guess we'll do it more than once. So to find that information out, you can go to tvfool.com and put your address in, and it will tell you where the antenna is that broadcasts the station in your area and how far away you are, and then what kind of antenna you probably need. The place that I do for that kind of stuff, another website, antennaweb.org, same idea. You put your address in, gives you a map, shows you where all that's at. And so very similar to what Shane did. I went out and I live like a mile from a Walmart. I went to Walmart. I spent $12 on the cheapest set of rabbit ears that they had. I set it in the window next to my TV, and it was done. For that TV, it was done. There was just nothing else to it. But then as my solution grew larger, that didn't scale very well. So what I ended up doing, I took that set of rabbit ears. While that worked great for that single TV, I had needs, outside of that. And so that set of rabbit ears ended up in my attic. And there was a single piece of coax running up in the attic. I put an end on it. And I literally just hung those rabbit ears by the wire over a stud in the attic. And they just happened to point the right direction. And it worked pretty well until this winter. And so I had to revisit that a little bit. But this is another one of those, kind of like buying the cheap little, $30 sticks. Getting the cheap antenna is a great way to just kind of get your toe in the water and figure out what's out there. And you might be surprised, like Shane's sister was, that it all just worked.
Yep. So people ask me, so what's a better antenna? So also here in the notes, we've got the antenna that I will probably buy. And so when you look at it, you'll see the picture. It is this big metal conglomerate of a thing. But I mean, it's still only $35. It is designed, though, not to hang on your wall or hang on your window as this cheap one currently does, but it goes in your attic or on your roof. and it's got a controller for like adjusting where it's aimed at, that type of stuff. With that $35 purchase, though, you probably also need a mounting pole for it. So that was another $16. So, it looks like I'll have to spend $50 to buy an antenna to go put it in my attic. But then I'm also going to have to get electricity up to my attic because it is powered. Yeah. So that's what stopped me from buying it, quite frankly, is I have not suffered enough. And when we talk about the services, we'll talk about what I do for local channels today. But there is a bigger antenna, and I think this is the right one. It claims 150-mile range. I'm only 20 miles from the antenna, and I have problems. So I'm hoping 150 miles, can do 20.
Yeah. So I recently changed my antenna for similar reasons. So what I found was my rabbit ears got me everything that I needed. There is one channel in this area that for whatever reason doesn't come in as well. And TVs are pretty dumb devices. They handle crappy signals fairly well, but I found once I started adding software to the mix and things like that we're going to talk about later, Tableau and Plex, they handled that less graciously. And so my cheap $12 rabbit ears didn't scale as well as I wanted. I have the same problem that you do. I don't have any electricity in my attic, and so I couldn't get a powered antenna. So I went to Best Buy and I bought a GE outdoor. It's called a Yagi antenna, and it's kind of the same kind of thing. I put a link in the notes about that. It was $50. Came with the mount, and I literally took the rabbit ears, pulled them off of the stud that they were on, unhooked them, put this thing together. It took me about 4 minutes, and just bolted it right in the same spot and hooked up the same wire. It's not powered, and got rid of all those problems. So
I'll have to look at that one.
Yeah, and I am, I believe, as the crow flies, 13 miles away from the broadcasting antenna. So I'm not going to climb up on my roof and put an antenna up. That's way more work than I care about. But this one, yeah, in the attic, there was wire there. Worked pretty well. So one of the things that was asked in the chat room, I think Brody asked earlier. Let me make sure I give a correct attribution. Yeah, Brody asked about this. Once we start having multiple TVs and multiple things like Tableaus and Plex and all that, what's the best way to use this antenna in more than one spot? So this is both a simple and a complicated question. The simple answer is a splitter, and there are tons of those. I went to Amazon after he asked that question. I went to Amazon to get a link for him and could not decide on a single one that I wanted to link to, so that's why there's not a link for that. But here are some things to keep in mind about splitters. So you're going to go out there, you're going to buy a little coax splitter. It's going to cost $8 to $10, not a big deal. But here's what you should think about. Do not go out like I want to do and buy the biggest, baddest one out there. If you have 3 places that your antenna is going to go, buy a 3 or a 4-way splitter. Don't buy the 8 splitter monstrosity and think you're going to use it later. Because this is, it's radio waves. And so you don't want to have places for signal to leak out. The more you split it, the weaker it gets. And while this is a digital piece of information, because everything's digital these days, it is coming in on an analog medium. And so you can weaken it. So get the smallest splitter that you can that will do what you want. If you're going to have multiple things split up because you're going to run it through your house to multiple TVs and to a Tableau and to an HD home run or whatever, consider getting a powered splitter. So there's some of those that are out there, and they're not expensive. We're talking like $20, $30 for these things. And also, I'm a big fan of wired connections, but my house is finished. I can't get wires everywhere I want. One of the ways to get Ethernet to places where there is no Ethernet is with a technology called MoCA, M-O-C-A, and that is essentially network that runs over coax cables. If you've got DirecTV, it uses a version of that called DECA, which is the same thing. So you want to make sure you get a splitter that supports MoCA if you're going to do that, and then you can run both TV signal and network over the same coax to your TV and then split it out behind the TV. Do those things.
Yeah. So to avoid solving that problem, right? So Todd went with a splitter and did all that fun stuff. And if I was going to do that, I could just run the antenna connection to where the cable used to come in the house because they've split everything out for me already from there.
Yep.
Another upside of having cable previously. But I went a different route. And so what I'm doing is I'm using a device called the Tableau Dual OTA DVR. And so what the Tableau is it's a little device. It's about the same size as the Roku that Todd showed us a few minutes ago, right? That 8-inch by 8-inch square. And so my antenna connects to the Tableau. The Tableau is the tuner, and then it makes its services available throughout my house by the wireless network, right? So or wired, in my case, network. I have it connected. And so then I go to my Roku and I open up the Tableau app, and then I can choose from my local broadcast stations and consume them that way. So instead of running wires and dealing with coax and all that, I just bring it all into the Tableau and then let the Tableau get on the network, and then I consume that from my various devices.
Yep, and I do that too. I've got an older version of the Tableau that I'll come to later, but I've got a myriad of things. So I have a TV that doesn't have a tuner, so I can't run coax there because it just doesn't have a tuner. So I have to use something like Tableau for that. But I do have some TVs that do have tuners, and we have one that's like a 13-inch one hanging in our kitchen. It doesn't have all the junk behind it, so it just gets a piece of coax. It can only run live TV. And that's fine because it's only like the news when we're cooking dinner or something like that. I have the Tableau. I also have a device called an HD Home Run that we're going to talk about, well, heck, right now. And so I needed to split out that way. So the Tableau is a great device. It is like, it's the perfect device for over-the-air cord cutting. So the one that you got is $200. It can record 2 things, but they have a 4-thing option also. And it just uses any old hard drive. The one that you have has some storage built in, I believe.
64 gigs.
Yeah, so mine's got USB ports. It's an older one, but I can hook any old hard drive up to it. And then it's just got an app everywhere. So it's got an app for Amazon Fire. It's got an app for Roku. It's got a web page, and it is just a DVR that does over-the-air stuff. It's a great little device. It's cheap. It's easy to use. You can use it for free if you choose to. It's kind of a dumb DVR. I tried that for a while, didn't like it. And so I think like you, I went with the $5 a month or the $50 a year service. And that pulls down all the metadata so I get the nice pictures of the TV shows and the descriptions and all that. And it also allows me to record things by name as opposed to by time. So instead of saying record CBS from 7 to 8 o'clock every Wednesday, I can say record Survivor. And then when the 3-hour thing is on, it picks all that up, all that.
So the other big upside of Tableau that I didn't even realize going into it, but it also can make itself available to you over the internet. Right. So I took it. I had to open a couple of firewall ports in my crazy setup. But now when I am, or at my kid's soccer game, my kid's not playing. I don't only do this when the kid's not playing. I can open up the app and watch the game using my over-the-air antenna, even though I'm on, my AT&T wireless phone all the way out there. And so that was an unintended perk of all of this.
Yeah.
Is just the fact that, now I can watch live over-the-air TV from my device wherever I'm at. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it does a couple of things that I like. Number one, it lets you watch our recording while it is recording. So I can start watching a show 15 minutes after the hour, but start at the beginning and then skip commercials or do whatever. Not everything will do that, so that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, since none of this is cable or satellite, there's no encryption or protection or anything. So I also have a program called Tableau Ripper that was just off of GitHub. Tableau just responds to REST requests in the web. So it's just the thing comes up, it's an app, it downloads the TV shows, and then I can copy them to Plex, or if I'm traveling, I can copy them to my laptop, watch them wherever I want. It's a pretty flexible little thing. I will say a couple things about the Tableau. I love the Tableau. If I were starting over again, I would buy another Tableau. I've had some problems with my Tableau. And the problem that I'm fighting right now, I don't know if it's my fault or their fault, but it gets stuck on loading a lot. So if I'm watching a TV show, it buffers a lot. Part of that could be the wireless in my house because I can't hardwire the consuming devices to the Tableau right now. So I have a love-hate with the Tableau right now, but when it works, it is a glorious device, and was really kind of the final key for me to be able to cord cut that piece of functionality. So let's talk about a little bit about the HD Home Run. I kind of hinted on that a little bit. The HD Home Run takes a little different approach to this than the Tableau. So the HD Home Run is a little itty-bitty box about the size of a deck of playing cards. It takes coax from your antenna, or they also have a cable version as well, and then it's got a network jack on it. And it basically is a network-aware tuner. It doesn't record. It doesn't have any apps that come with it. It just takes that over-the-air signal and presents itself as a tuner on your network. And there are a bunch of apps that can consume an HD Home Run. So I think like the program VLC, Video LAN Player, can do it. I bought it because it works with another piece of software called Plex. And so Plex is something that's been around forever, and it's a place where you could have movies. You could rip your movies to it or TV shows, and it was kind of like a personal Netflix. I think is probably the best way to describe it. But late last year, Plex added support for live TV, and it does it through an HD home run tuner. So this HD home run box just sits wherever. It could sit in your attic if your attic is powered. Mine sits in my basement. Connects to your antenna, connects to your network, and then things like Plex say, hey, I'm looking for a tuner on the network. Hey, there's an HD home run. And now with Plex, I can record TV and all that kind of stuff. Great functionality for that. Love that solution. The other great thing that the HD home run has is it does have like an app for Android and all that. And it has a diagnostic app. And so when I was up in my attic pointing my antenna, my Yagi antenna, I've got it on the mount, I had the HD Home Run app hooked up. The antenna was hooked up to the HD Home Run, and I could tweak my antenna just a little bit and point it just the right direction, and I could watch my signal, and I could see exactly what channels I got, what the signal were. Perfect little tool.
Yeah, I was very sad the Tableau didn't have that, because I didn't realize that was only a function of HD Home Run until, not that it was too late, but I got to the point I was ready to use it, and I was like, but
yeah. And the HD Home Run, they've got a bunch of different versions of that. The one that I've got is like an $80 one. And I will say, we're going to talk about this a little later on, but once you switch over to cord cutting, the stability of your network is paramount, and how well you have your antenna tuned and all that is very important. Again, some of these things like the HD Home Run, the Tableau TV, they don't handle bad signal very well. And so you do want to make sure you have things aimed well.
Yeah. So do we want to just jump into how to get started?
Let's do that. Time-wise, we're not doing a horrible job. Well, maybe.
I thought we were way behind.
Yes, as I scrolled down, I saw the next chunk. Never mind. Yeah, we're way behind.
But you can go through this section half this first start anyway.
Yep. So my advice on how to get started. Number one, make sure your infrastructure is in good place. You've got wires, Ethernet wires running where you might want them. If you're using wireless, make sure that you've got good coverage everywhere and you're running the latest wireless gear, 11AC, I think, and maybe some of that MIMO stuff. This is going to tax your wireless network in ways it's never been taxed before. So it's got to be in a good place. My house, again, it's a newer house, but it's not wired the way I want. This is hurting me. I can feel the pain of bad wireless with cord cutting that I couldn't feel before. Also, everything now is going to be coming over your internet connection. So your internet connection has to be solid, has to be fast. I've got a friend who has crappy internet, and it's because of his location. It's not because he's refuses to pay for it. But he was telling me a couple of weeks ago that it's like Sunday nights are the only time that him and his family, all of his kids are home, so they like have a family movie night and all that. Their internet connection is just ever so slightly fast enough to stream Netflix. So they have this thing that before they sit down, everybody makes sure that their phones are no longer on the wireless, that they're using the phone connection. All the tablets are in airplane mode because there's just no extra bandwidth on their internet connection. And if they start doing that, if somebody's thing kicks in and starts downloading a podcast, Netflix starts to buffer. So make sure you've got a good internet connection.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point in time, a good internet connection for most of us is pretty cheap and affordable. And, we have 100 megs down and 5 megs up, and that's like the bottom package these days. So
yeah, and I would say when I say good internet package, I'm saying if you can get 20, 25 meg down, you're probably okay. This friend of mine, he's not getting anywhere near that. But yeah, 20, 25 meg down. So the next thing that you need to do is you need to set your expectations for cord cutting correctly. This isn't just like cable. It's going to be more work. One of the things that I discovered as I was going through this cord cutting odyssey is that $100 and whatever that I'm saving a month, what that was getting me was convenience. It wasn't getting me content. It was getting me convenience. The convenience of going to one place for everything always. That's what we're giving up. So set your expectations. Know that it's going to be a little bit of work, but I will say that when I first hatched this crazy plan of cord cutting and got it all put in place, I was sitting down with my wife and I'm like, okay, here's how we watch TV. If you want to watch live TV, you go to this app. If you want to watch recorded TV, you want to go to this app. If you want to watch movies, it can be this app or this app or this app. If you want to watch HBO, it's in this app. If you want to watch Stars, it's over here. I was just like, oh, I felt horrible. But what I found was after a couple of months, nobody noticed. Like you just know, I want to watch Stars. It's in Amazon. Bloop. So there'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not going to be so bad.
Yeah, and then for us, right, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'm the one with the remote anyway, so there's no thinking. And we don't have all the devices that you do. We're getting pretty much everything out of either Netflix or out of PlayStation View for probably 99% of our TV watching right now, so we haven't had to do any of that. But we'll talk about it a little later. I don't know when later because we're running out of time, but we'll talk about it a little more, some of the challenges and the upsides once you figure out where it is. So.
Yeah, that was more pain than I thought it was going to be starting, and then that crappy pain went away much more quickly than I thought it would after I discovered it. But set your expectations. And part of that, also, your time for doing that, is our second bit of advice: don't rush in. So because this stuff can work in tandem, I know Shane did the same thing that I did. I started laying some of these pieces down while I was still paying for DirecTV because I already had the Roku box. PS View had a 30-day trial. So I was able to start putting these pieces together without disrupting things. Also, times like the summer are a good time to do this because there's not as much new programming, but you also don't find all the warts as easily. So know that if you do it in a time like that, when the fall kicks in, you're like, oh my God, how do I watch college football? But don't rush in. Get your hardware in place. Get your antenna in place if you need to. Test it out, and then cut the cord.
Yeah. So then I think the next step in all that, right, is figure out what channels you must have.
Yeah.
This was how I finally got over the hump and started. I was like, all right, wifey, what are the channels you must have? She's like, all right, I must have Hallmark channels so I can watch all them Christmas movies, round the clock Christmas movies all the time. The neighbor that I was helping, he had to have the NHL network. Some of the viewers or some of our friends in Facebook and stuff have asked us about things like HGTV and OWN and TLC. Whatever it is, give yourself that list. All right, here's the 5 things I must have. And then it makes it a lot easier to say, all right, now I'm going to go to DirecTV Now. Do they have these? And what package? Sling and then View. And that was how I did it. And I finally was like, all right, my matrix says I should try Sling first. And that's how I started with Sling.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And also recognize, you'll probably mess that up because you'll forget about stuff. Depending on what time of the year it is, you'll forget about things. I found a great webpage at cordcuttersnews.com, and I'll link it there'll be a blog post and all that kind of stuff, and I'll have this in there. But they have a seemingly frequently updated post that has every channel they know of in a grid with every service. And so you can go down, you can find the Hallmark channel. It's on these services, NHL package on these services, and that gives you a fighting chance. The thing to keep in mind about this, though, is it changes constantly, all the time, for the best, for the better, and for the worse. So channels that didn't exist start popping into services, and you're like, oh, that's great, I can get View now because they just added, TBS. But then every side wants more money, and companies buy other companies. And, so January 1st is coming up, and, Netflix is going to lose a bunch of stuff because their agreement ran out. So this is something you got to keep on top of. But yes, figuring out what things you have to have is an important part.
Yeah. So real quick, we'll just do the viewer questions. So Pickles and Brooke, they asked me, hey, Bravo, got to have Bravo.
Yeah.
Turns out that pretty much every one of the packages that we're going to talk about, they carry Bravo. So ladies, you are set.
Yeah. And it's good to mention that all of them have trials. So if you're not sure, sign up for the trial. Spend no money. See if Bravo's there. Absolutely.
So then Christy said, I got to have HGTV, OWN. Oh, I can't believe she watches Oprah's network, but we're not going to judge. And then TLC. So for her, DirecTV's got it. Sling does not. And then View actually has all 3 of those channels in their cheapest package even. So
there you go.
And that's all it took. They gave me their lists. I said, here you go. And that's the way you guys, just tackle it that way. Don't overthink it.
Yep. And then the last bit of advice, if you don't have a device already to try it out, but get the cheapest device you can, the cheapest Roku, the cheapest Amazon, and just start playing with those trials.
Yeah, and so speaking of trials, so one of the things to watch out for, though, is they're all different links, right? And they're usually they're time-stamped even, right? So it's 5 days. It is literally, 120 hours from the moment you start till they send you that first bill. So watch for that. Also, if you look at all of these different packages, most of them you can kind of go one of 2 ways. You can do the free trial for 5 to 7 to 14 days, depending on how you get their trial. Or if you'll just sign up cold turkey, they'll give you something free, right? So if you sign up for Sling, they give you a free antenna and Roku if you pay for 3 months up front or something. So depending on your comfort with that type of stuff, you can't get both. You either get a free trial or you can get some free hardware out of them, but you're agreeing to use them for 1 or 3 months. I went the free trial routes because I don't want to be beholden to anyone, but I could definitely see the argument for getting my Roku for free because I really just watched PlayStation View for 5 days and then started paying anyway. So
yeah. So the trial thing, important to know about that time thing. What I do, I'm a big nerd. I use Outlook everywhere. So when I sign up for that thing, I just put an appointment in Outlook. If it's a 5-day trial in 4 days, I'm like, are we still using View? That's how I keep track of that stuff. Let's write that. So now, for the last 5 minutes, what are the options? So we've talked about a bunch of those. So I'm gonna list them all first, and then we can talk about which ones we like. PS View, PlayStation View is a big one. You do not need a PlayStation for that. I've never owned a PlayStation in my life. The fact that PlayStation isn't the name for that is killing them. I've never touched a PlayStation. I don't have one. It's all Roku. PS View. Sling TV, that's another good one. DirecTV Now is another good one. Hulu and YouTube TV are also good ones. And these are the ones that have the big packages of lots of channels that you can get. They have apps on all of the devices or all of the platforms. And those are in that list that I talked about on cordcuttersnews.com covers those. So which one you've mentioned before, which one did you end up with?
So right now I'm on PlayStation View. Couple reasons for that. And as you're going through this, right, you're doing the trials, there's things to look at. One of the, first of all, make sure it's got the channels you want. There's no point in doing a trial if it didn't have your channels. But the second one is you want to play with, look at how many devices it can be on at a time. So for example, half of Sling's Orange service can only be on one device, period. So, you can watch it on this TV or that TV, but not at the same time. Their Blue is like 2 devices. But whereas like PlayStation View and DirecTV Now, they both let you do like 4 devices, I think, by default. So that's a consideration for you. The DVR functionality, they've all got some form of cloud DVR now. Some of them charge you extra. I think.
And thinking of it as DVR is a misnomer. It's more on demand at this point. It's a better way to think of it, is on demand.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because you go to PlayStation View, you say, add this to my my watch list. And so then when you go to watch it in their DVR, really all it's doing is pulling down a copy from their servers and you're watching it on demand. Yeah. The downside of that is you can't fast forward, right? Because it is just streaming the show. So if the show doesn't let you fast forward through the commercials, you still have to watch all the commercials, which is different than if you DVR on your cable box today, or if you DVR with a Tableau over the air, where you can just fast forward at will. So something to consider. And
some of those do it and some don't. It depends on the provider. And
Oh, it's real confusing. Because one of the things I really struggled with, I think it was with Sling when I was watching ESPN. I used to like to be able to, hey, if the wife's yelling at me in the middle of a football game, I can hit pause on live TV, go get yelled at, come back and hit play. Well, because of Sling's agreement with ESPN, they're not allowed to do that. I couldn't pause a live NFL football game with the Sling device. And so there's a bunch of weirdness like that you just got to do the trials to kind of figure out which one does and doesn't work in that particular scenario for you.
Yeah. And again, that's something that changes. It's all about legal agreements. It's not a hardware limitation. It's just about, what kind of a deal ESPN gets with whoever.
Yeah. The other thing I'd encourage you as you're looking at these, I've kind of gotten off script here, but is the guide functionality, right? So when I go into PlayStation View, you're real used to cable and DirecTV where I can kind of scroll through and I can real easy just check this channel, check this channel, check this channel, and watch a whole bunch of TV, right? As Todd said earlier, buffet grazing. Because of the way these tune the channels in and out through the download stream, it's not as easy as you want just to be able to I want to quickly check this channel. Yeah, now I want to watch that channel while I look for a different channel. Some of that interface isn't exactly what you're expecting. So try those scenarios out also.
And I will say with that, so I've had that exact experience. I do most of my TV watching on 2 TVs, most of it PS View, and most of it on Roku. And because of the different generations of Roku clients and all that, the PS View app got updated on one, but not the other. So on one of them, it had the old PS View version, was just kind of the rows, and it was really tough to navigate. But the newer Roku box got the newer PS View app that had the grid style like I was used to from the old TV days. So it had all the channels, which is funny. Now the channels are in alphabetical order because there's no channel numbers. So that was a really odd thing the first time. But so now, as of a month or so ago, the PS View app on Roku is exactly the way that I wanted it to be by time and by channel, whereas it wasn't. And it wasn't on my other TV until a couple days ago. So again, that's one of those things constantly changing.
Yep. So another big win for View for me is that they have contracts in place where my local NBC, CBS, and Fox stations, the over-the-air broadcast comes through the View. So that all that antenna pain in the butt I was talking about, for those 3 channels I don't need. So now the only channel that I actually need the over-the-air antenna for, sadly, is my ABC channel, which has happened where most college football is. So I'm going to have an antenna forever to keep that. But they do then have access to the ABC on demand. So I could go get, I don't know what show comes on, Speechless comes on ABC on demand. I could get those shows that way. But that was one of the big upsides to me from View versus Sling, was being able to get CBS and all those channels that way. You're muted. You're telling a great story.
By contrast, I have, same View package, all that, but in my market, CBS is the only one I can get live. And so the rest of them are all demand. But then with CBS, I can't pause and all that kind of stuff. So I can watch the local news on CBS, whereas I can't watch the local ABC news. So yes, it's all different. Shane and I's story as of today will probably be different than yours, and your story today might be different than it is in a month because of all those agreements.
And that's back to the trial, right? Get the trial. Can you watch your local affiliates? Don't just because some website says you can. Can you actually get them? Because when you sign up, they're going to ask you for your zip code, and then everything's going to be determined off of your zip code.
Yep. So winding down a little bit. So as for the packages of the channels, one thing that I found was PS View did not have stars, which we wanted to watch some shows that were on stars. We didn't want to pay the $15 to get stars and add the all package. What we found was that Amazon Prime had it for $8 a month. So the same thing. There was a show we wanted to watch. We paid $8 a month for 3 months. And then we canceled it. So don't always look at the actual thing. There's a couple other places you can get some of those premium ones. I did want to talk about Plex a little bit because I've mentioned it a little earlier and then we had some questions about it. Plex is software that runs on premises. So it either runs on a computer that you have in your house, or if you've got a NAS, a network attached storage device like a Synology or something like that, QNAP, it can run on that as well. Traditionally, Plex has been a way that, like when my kids, when they get DVDs for Christmas or whatever, I rip those DVDs, I put them on Plex so that my kids can never destroy them because kids ruin everything. So Plex has always been that, and it excels at that, and it's got clients for Roku and Amazon and Chromecast and your phone and your tablet and TVs. I bought a TV, it's got a Plex client built in. It's a great little thing. A year or so ago, they added live TV support. So now I use that as my DVR, and it's got the program guide and all of that. BJ sent me an email, asked about what I use for storage for that. I've got it running on a dedicated computer. I've got a little an Intel NUC, one of the little small things. And I've just got a 4 terabyte USB drive plugged into that. That's where all of my Plex stuff is stored. All of the movies that I rip, all of the TV shows that I DVR, because I don't care about it. That's the second drive that's been hooked up to that. And one of the hard drives died. It was a pain in the butt. But it was all TV shows and it was all movies that I already have anyway, so I just re-ripped them, recopied them down. But Plex can run on a computer or a NAS. It can actually also store on a computer or a NAS, so you can have Plex running on a computer, storing it on a NAS that you already have, vice versa, all of that. Rob in the chat room is asking what I use to rip DVDs. Shane and I promised we would keep all this in the realm of legal things. And so some of that software gets confusing between DVDs and Blu-rays because of encryption and all of that. I'm not sure where all that's at. I use a program called Handbrake, and I don't remember where all of that functionality is at now. But you have to rip it, you have to compress it, you have to do those things. Hit me up offline, Rob. We can chat a little more about that. But I'm a big fan of Plex. Can't say enough good things about it. Let's spend a couple minutes rounding out the rough spots that we wanted to talk about.
I think we snuck in most of those, other than maybe the live sports.
Yeah. So for me, the toughest thing for cord cutting has been sports, live sports, and I'm not even a sports guy. So I live in a college town, Ames, Iowa State. So I like to watch Iowa State basketball games, Iowa State football games. Getting that has been tougher, but not impossible. A lot of that's on like ESPNU or ESPN2 or on local TV. They also have Cyclones.tv, which is their own website with the Big 12 and all that. Had to get an app for that, had to pay a couple of games, but not a big deal. But NFL has been tough because now I don't have the NFL Sunday Ticket on DirecTV, which spoiled me. Could watch my Chiefs whenever I wanted to, wherever I wanted to. That's been a little tougher. Now I have to hope to goodness that CBS shows that game when it's airing. But live TV and sports are the two real rough areas.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people it's getting rid of the live TV. It's getting rid of their DVR, right? That was one of the big things. The wife's like, "Well, I got to watch everything on the DVR before we can go." And one day I just took it away, and she's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and DVRs are a mixed blessing. I love having all of my stuff there, but it ended up being work. It ended up being a task list. It ended up being something that I like. We got to watch all these episodes. They're piling up on the DVR. It's been a huge weight off our shoulders.
And one of the ways that we kind of overcome that, so like, for example, last night she's like, oh man, I wish we could watch that the rap battle show on TBS now. It comes on like 10:30 at night. I don't know. Method Man hosted. It's an interesting show. It's pretty funny though sometimes. Anyway, went over and I was like, well, I bet we can. And so I went out to the Roku. I added the TBS On Demand app, and one of the providers that TBS On Demand supports is PlayStation Vue. So I put in my PlayStation Vue credentials. Within 3 minutes, I was up and watching the show she wanted to do. And so that's something else that goes into your evaluation phase is make sure that you look at, what on-demand services support your app, right? So the PlayStation Vue didn't have TBS On Demand in their app, but I could put the TBS On Demand app on my device and then use my PlayStation Vue credentials to authenticate. Boom, I'm up and watching it. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and so that's a fair thing. The other thing is some of these services like PS Vue and all that, their DVR is limited to like a month or something like that. And so you go into PS Vue, you try to find something from a month and a day ago. It's outside of the range of the DVR. You curse. But putting the app on for that provider, the CBS app, the TBS app, it's a completely different story. They don't have the same rules. So, you can go back and watch some of those older things, watch all the seasons of whatever through the app that authenticates through PS Vue. Have done that a lot also.
Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to hit real quick, we got a lot of questions about YouTube TV, because YouTube TV's done a great job of advertising.
Yes.
So a couple of things there for me, and then we'll see what Todd's reactions are. But one is it's available on less devices, right? They're trying to overcome that. But for example, Todd talked about it's probably never going to show up on the Fire Stick. It's not on the Roku yet, right? They're optimizing for Google Chromecast right now as their first platform. So that's been a little challenging. I also, looking at it at a quick glance, YouTube TV to me seemed to have the least amount of channels, right? They're having the hardest time getting content licensed. So I have no doubt that the behemoth that is Google or Alphabet or whatever you want to call them these days, who's getting a new CEO, but that's for a different show.
The After Dark show.
They are doing, I don't have a doubt that YouTube TV is going to do really well in the long run, but it wouldn't even worth a trial to me in its current state.
No, and when it first came out, you could only get it in certain areas, and I wasn't in one of those areas, so I couldn't try it if I wanted to. I agree with all the things that you said, and again, I will reiterate that this stuff changes all the time.
Yes.
And so YouTube TV right now is a non-starter for me. But in 6 months, they might get the licenses that they need, and the apps might show up, and it might be the greatest thing ever in 6 months. So it's tough to say. And again, this is that whole, a year ago, you and I were paying $100, $200 a month to not have to worry about those things.
Yep.
But, we're saving good money. So we have eked a little bit past our initial half-hour idea. So we've added a little bit more. Got some great questions in the chat room and all that. And a lot of people have emailed us and Facebooked us about that. Let us know what you think about that. Is this something we should revisit like once a quarter and just kind of see how the industry's at? What things didn't we answer this time? We'd love to hear about it. We will likely blog this on toddclint.com at some point. Get all these links. I guess the podcast will go out there, so it'll have all the links and all of that. But would love to hear your stories and experiences.
Yeah, the other thing I'll throw out there, right, is you're like, man, I want to do this, but I want somebody to hold my hand. We would probably, I'm guessing Bold Zebras would offer a consulting package where we would happily kind of help you make all these decisions. I'm not going to show up at your house and put it all in for you, but
that'd be creepy.
Yeah, but at least tell you what devices to buy and help you have all the conversations. So what the heck? I'll throw it out there that Bold Zebras now has a package that will help you figure out how to cut the cord if you're so inclined to spend a couple of dollars. It'd be way cheaper than the $150 you spend a month or $250.
Yeah, because sometimes some people just don't want to mess with that. I get that. Just, tell me what I need. Tell me how to get up. I'm out. So call Shane at Bold Zebras.
There you go.
All right. So typical podcast fashion, we have to spend the last couple of minutes shamelessly self-promoting ourselves. This is the month between Lori's birthday and my birthday, so we are doing the charity fundraiser. For those of you that are not familiar with this, started many, many years ago, just to show what a great group of people watch the podcast. between December 18th and January 21st, Lori's birthday and my birthday, we have any charitable contributions that you guys, the viewers, the readers of the blog, do. Go to pointgowin, pointgowin.com/TK charity. Tell Lori how much you gave and give to whatever charity you want. I don't care. I'm not promoting any charities. Give it to a charity that's important to you and just tell her how much you gave and where you gave it. And we're going to put it all together and then, clap for ourselves at the end of the month and talk about how great we are. In the past, the carrot that I dangled in front was however much you guys donate to charity, I will match. But then the donations started getting really big and in the thousands and thousands of dollars. And my wife, the accountant, had some opinions on my generosity on that. So I don't know where that sits right now. We're over $2,000 already. We're only a week in, 4 days in. So go out there. Big thing. I love that. If you're watching this show and you're thinking about doing this, chances are you're okay. Like, not great. Everybody can be better, but there are a lot of people out there that are really hurting. And so this is a good time of year for me to just reflect on how lucky I am that I've got 4 tablets here sitting in front of me, 3 of which I've never touched. So it's a good idea for me to give a little back and help out people that I can help out. So consider doing that. pointgowin.com/TK charity. Notes, a link in the notes below. Do that.
Yeah. And then if you love hanging out with Todd and I and you are a SharePoint nerd, or if you're not, just enjoy hanging out with us. Why not?
Who wouldn't?
We will be at the SharePoint North American Conference, right? It is the SharePoint show. Microsoft's endorsing it. Microsoft will be there. Big new announcements are coming out at the show. Todd and I will be there. We're going to deliver some main sessions where we'll be standing room only. There's an all-day event we're doing on Thursday as well. So if you just want to have a deep dive with us, I'll give you a free hug. And if you use the referral code YOUNG, then I will give you a little kiss on the cheek too. So it won't be awkward at all.
Yeah. If you use the referral code YOUNG, you get $50 off of your registration for SharePointNA.com. I also, and this is unsubstantiated, I can't prove this, but I suspect that list is also sold to some cockroaches and they will invade your underwear drawer. So it's just all a matter of, if you use the referral code Clint, the cockroach piece doesn't happen. You get the $50 off. You get the free hug from Shane, whether you want it or not, but no cockroaches. So,
yeah. See, and if we did the After Dark show, I would go somewhere with that. But I'm going to let it all go and say, it's too close to the holidays. I can't use any of that. But remember, that's May 21st through 23rd in sunny Las Vegas. So it's not too hot there in May. I'm excited.
Yeah, and that's SharePointNA.com, the SharePoint North America Conference. If you have any questions about it, give us a shout. We are super excited to be involved with this thing.
And I think an hour and 13 minutes later, we're probably done.
We got it. My tummy's grumbling. It's lunchtime for me. Thanks, everybody. Again, give us feedback. Let us know if this was valuable, all that kind of stuff, and we'll do more of it.
Toodaloos.
See you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Joyous Kwanzaa.